This will be part travelogue and part the main thing I was plowing through, which is grief, as you can see. And I first of all want to just thank you all for giving me the opportunity to do this. To have 3 months to really completely step away from things was a huge gift. Often space and quiet is the thing that makes it challenging to process what we're going through. And so I really appreciate that. And you honored it tremendously. I said, Ms. Idol said to me, I will not be bothering you unless if there's something you want me to bother you about. And I said, only if somebody dies or if something happens to the wing, our habitat project. So we had 2 deaths in the Habitat Wing project and this, and I received calls for that. But other than that, I was allowed to fully engage in the sabbatical. The grief was largely managed because of faith, right? So I'm not going to be talking a lot about the specifics of that. I'm kind of assuming we understand that that our faith in Christ holds us during these hard times and brings a community around us that helps keep us to hold it together, but I didn't want to go without saying that. So this is what our year was like. This is 2024 in the summer. My mother-in-law, Shirley Jones, died on July 16th. We were at her funeral. The whole family was there for that. And in the next morning, we got a call that my mom had died. And we were really almost in the car heading over. She never got to meet Delphi, and so they were going to rush to get there. They would have gotten 10 miles from Des Moines and found out that the trip would not be helpful. And so my mom is Lola Ruge. She died on July 24th. And then Lori's dad, Ruge-Jones, died on August 26th. I had not been planning on having a sabbatical, and so this became the reason I asked for it. But I'm going to say lots of things you're going to like. You had to leave for 3 months to figure that out, Pastor Phil, but sometimes we just need to name the obvious things. How important the people we love are in that time. You were those people for me. You were very patient with me in the midst of that. I never felt like anyone was putting pressure on me to get through things too quickly. That support was important. These are just 2 pictures of comfort. My mom had she was burned as a child. Her clothes started on fire when she was a child. She was scarred from here to here. And so her lungs never functioned in quite the way that one would hope they would. And so she had pneumonia. My dad was frantic because he couldn't be with her, or he depended on other people to get him there. And she recovered enough from pneumonia to come back for one day, or for a couple days. And so this is between her 2 pneumonia bouts. The second one took her. When my dad had his stroke 8 years ago, it was a timely thing to have it happen then, because I'd just gotten here. And not here at Grace, but here in Eau Claire. I wasn't doing anything, and it gave me the freedom to go and take care of them. When we moved up here, my wife said, this will give us an opportunity to see more of our family. My dad had been the primary caregiver for my mom, so I didn't know that seeing more of my family meant nudity and helping with showers. But she was a nurse, and she just kind of rolled with the things we needed to do to take care of her during that time. Their one goal when my dad had a stroke was to find a facility that would let them both share a room together. And they did that until my mom died. So for 8 years in Oshkosh. And then the other picture is Louisa and Lori right after we received my word of my mom's death. And so that time of comforting and being together, it's a weird thing to say that was a gift, but it was nice that we got the message when the whole family was still present to one another. And of course, with funerals, you get to see family that you don't always get to see. And so these are my nephews and nieces and kids. And my dad is there. This is my mom's funeral. And it's fun. The kids don't get to see each other very often, but when they do, it's like they're hanging out weekly. You would never know it watching them interact. And so that was exciting. And then at Shirley's funeral, this is Lori's side of the family. So the nieces and nephews on that side of the family and their kids. And that's her dad, Russ, who is every bit as cheerful as he looks in this picture. So this is the way that I experienced grief. I felt weary all the time. I would just have these huge waves of sadness that would come over me, and I was distracted, right? I just couldn't focus. It was very helpful that there were people in the congregation who'd gone through that and said, yep, that's exactly what it's like, Phil. At least 6 months, count on it being at least 6 months. And it's not going to completely go away after that. So in the midst of that, Lori had been planning a sabbatical for years, and she said, why don't you come along? And I asked Grace, and you graciously said yes. And so that was at around Thanksgiving, I think, that I made that request. Right after that, my stepfather-in-law died. This is Lauren Reineking. And then when we were actually in Denmark, my father died on May 27th. So I always think we became orphans in 11 months, right? We knew my dad was really failing. He was lucky if he could be awake for an hour a day. And so we knew the end was coming. He just wanted to be with my mom, to be honest. They had planned it that he was supposed to die 3 days after she did. That she had to die first, but then he would die 3 days later. And they weren't able to pull that off. But one of the main things that I carry with me through this whole experience is that every grief has its own terrain, right? That each of these 5 deaths impacted me in a different way. And each of the people who were grieving processed the grief different. They had a different relationship with a person. And so the only way to work through the grief is to walk the terrain. And ideally to have somebody there with you. Right? Does that make sense? Right? Each of us experience the deaths differently because each of us handles grief differently. So I'm not going to advise you today, this is the way you should do it. I'm just going to tell you this is what helped me. And if it helps you, or you can rework it, then use it. And if not, then just leave it in the room when you go. The single most helpful thing that I did for me personally, besides the company of loved ones, was writing the eulogies for both of my parents. And I would say that might be a good exercise to do, even if you're not going to say it to anyone. To just say, like if I were to condense in 10 minutes, or if you're at Grace, I'll give you 5, but I took 10. What would you say about the person? What really gets to the heart of who they are? I'm not even sure if people heard me at them because I was sobbing throughout the whole thing. When I watched the video, I was like, yeah, I think most of it got through, but it was really meaningful to me. And then each time I ran through it in my head, it was an opportunity to shed more tears. And so I found that super helpful. And then look for moments to celebrate. So to balance off the times with grief with whatever you can celebrate. And so right at the beginning of our sabbatical, the very first thing that we did was we went to Delphi's first birthday party. So there's little maps behind so you can more or less keep track of where we are. So this is Texas, and this is Delphi's birthday party. She had a fairy princess theme. And you can see all the people I've introduced except my wife Lori is in this as well. And I'm Dumbledore, and my costume cost something like $100,000 because it's my doctoral robe. So I paid a lot to get my costume. Nobody else's even came close. So, but there's Delphi in a shining moment in it. So the obvious, right? If you can find time, downtime, celebrative time with people that remain, maybe people who know the person as well, so you can share stories. I found that really important. And then a basic thing, which I didn't learn because of these deaths, because it's been a constant discipline of mine, it's to take naps. And but it was really important during this time when I was feeling weary. And if you don't, right, things could go wrong. So she had one of those cakes where it's going to be fun. You just get to throw your hands in it. And it was like an hour and a half after nap time, after engaging a group about your size. And she did not find it as magical as we had dreamed of. And so thinking about Delphi really helped me out a lot. And just saying that what we shared as a family with my parents is now continuing on in the next generation. So this is a video I'm going to show you that I filmed. I was the most likely early riser in the house during the birthday festivities, which meant I got 2 hours alone, one-on-one with Delphi from like 7 to 9 o'clock. And we would have conversations. And so this one, I asked her who this is, and everything in that time was daddy. So whatever she pointed to, she'll say, Dada. And then I say, what's my name? Papa. And then she says Papa. So that's a great thing to watch over and over again. And then I ask her, we have a thing in my family that we did, which is if you were separated from each other in the mall or somewhere, you'd go, woohoo, woohoo, woohoo. And then somebody in another corner would go, woohoo, and you just keep moving closer to each other until you found each other, right? Unless if you're a daughter-in-law, and then you just head in the other direction, but at least you know where they are and avoid the embarrassment. So Lucas taught Delphi to do that. And you'll also see her, she knows a little bit of sign language, so she's going to tell me at 7 in the morning she's hungry. So let's see how this works. Oops.
Who am I? Papa? Papa. Can you say, woo-hoo?
I'm hungry. So her sweet little hoo-hoo. The heart of Lori's sabbatical plans, which were before we knew anybody was going to die. She had been planning it for like 5 years. So she wanted to go back to Denmark, which was where her family comes from. And so we spent about 4 weeks in the beginning of the sabbatical in Denmark. There's the Danish flag. And if you want to know the places we were, Lori, we weren't going to do tourism. We were going to discover her family roots. And so and I can even cite statistics because she's not here with a rebuttal because I'm never quite accurate on those. But we chose to stay in nice, smallish towns. So one is 30,000 and one is under 9,000. And not be distracted by doing all sorts of touristy things, but have some opportunities we could do in them. And so we were in Svendborg for 2 weeks, and then Ribe, which is the smaller one. It's the oldest city in Denmark. And then we would do day trips. They had a thing in like Airbnbs for cars where you could rent somebody's personal car for 2 or 3 hours and use it and then return it for a fee. It's all insured and it's all vetted. And so we used that on the few times we left the cities. We went to church all the time, every Sunday, I mean. So we were still jet lagged, and we found out on Saturday night that this church had a 5 o'clock international service. And so we went to it. There were people from about 8 or 9 different countries that were there. We heard 6 languages. And this is the priest. It's a state church, so she works for the state. And I love the way the sun was coming down on her as she was getting ready for communion. And then that ended up being, they had a Danish for Conversation group, and Lori had studied some Danish, and so she got to go with that and have conversations. That's how she found out about that rent-a-car thing. So it was great. And we saw lots of churches and cemeteries. This is in Ringe. So that we went to churches. We were pretty sure if we went to a Lutheran church in one of the towns her parents lived, we were walking the same stones that they did, right? We had thought we would maybe be able to find some gravestones. Her family's name is Hansen, so you would think there'd be a lot of those, but it turns out that in Denmark, usually you have a grave site for about 25 years, and then unless if you renew it, it goes to somebody else. So they dig up the bones, if there's still bones, bury them lower, and then put the next person on top, or they have another space in the cemetery. So it's a landlocked, right? It's an island, and so that's the way they do it, which is very different than the way we do it. Often they were like parks. They were gorgeous. They were decorated. There wasn't like a big lawn to mow. There were just like, you could see some of these little alcoves, and often 6 family members' urns would be buried in the same place. So we're connecting to the past and looking to the future. I think for Lori, one of the loveliest moments was visiting this church where her grandpa was baptized in 1907, and we know this is the baptismal font because it's 500 years old. And it's probably also the place, hello, where her great-grandfather and their families were baptized. And so that was really cool. They had these ships hanging. You've seen them in some of the churches. Some of them would have 4 or 5 of them in them. In terms of something very practical, Louisa for Christmas gave me this book. It was like daily devotions to do, to think about the loss you're experiencing. And they weren't huge things. It was a good book for me. I don't know if it's a perfect book, but just taking 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day and thinking about things was really helpful. The nice thing was at the end of the book, the last 2 chapters were how to respond to people who say stupid things to you. And I was like, I can just zip through these chapters, because really at Grace, nobody was coming up to me and saying things like to dismiss the grief, right? Or trying to rush me through it. And so that was in and of itself being able to run through those. So simple acts of remembering, of processing, and connecting were helpful to me. I still do them. So like when I put my dad's pectoral cross on Sunday, it's a little moment with him. I sing, "There was a little dog, skinny as a rail, he had fleas all over his tail." When I'm brushing my teeth, just to kind of remember him. When I'm doing my nails, that was one of the lovely things I got to do with my mom. I would manicure her when I was there, and so like that reminds me of the time I got to hold my mom's hands. And this is the image I have. It's like grief is a bucket of tears and you're trying to carry it, but it's to the brim, right? So each tiny practice it's not emptying the bucket, but it's removing a teaspoon more, and you take out a half a cup and you can at least get around with the bucket and just continue to find ways to do that. I had a few distractions, but that's different than being distracted, right? When I'm at Grace, I'm probably thinking about 12 things simultaneously. That's why I can't find my watch, right? I'm thinking about, text study's coming up. Did I mail the lessons to the person? What about that bat in the corner? All the things. And so having those cleared away and then choosing things that we could be distracted by was helpful. So this is, when we were in Ribe, it just happened to be when the King of Denmark was there. And so here's my wife, Lori. Hey, she's coming from her services, so here, there, not here, here. And so there's it's off the screen. Let me see. How do I do that? So the King of Denmark is right to the left of that huge pole. And he just walked in, no security detail that we could see, right? And we thought, this is going to be huge. It's going to be like a big patriotic moment. The Danes all quietly raised their flags, twitched them 5 times, and then brought them down. And he just walked by the crowd and went to run in the marathon. It was the royal run all over the country. And so he ran the first kilometer with the folks. The person who rented us our Airbnb is a Viking reenactor, and so he was one of the people who greeted him, and he said, I was going to run with him, but it's really hard to run in chainmail, so we decided not to do that. And then we discovered these Dambo sculptures. They're Vikings, or not Vikings, they're trolls and giants. And they're in the woods just for you to stumble upon. We just were fascinated by them. This is, what's the name of her? The middle one. Little Tilda. She was by this lake that it had a ferry that you hand pulled yourself across. It was kind of cool. And then because we loved them there, we started looking for them here. And so the bearded one up here is in the UP that we saw when we were there. And this is the closest to us. It's Wauwatosa, and it's called Mama Rosa of Wauwatosa. And she's plucked the lampposts in the park, and there's all these stubs of lampposts around her, and at night it lights up. So I've always thought this would be cool to have at Grace. That one cost $365,000, so I don't think that dream is gonna happen. And then we went to Legoland, different kinds of sculpture. Right, there's a Danish flag in Legos, and you can see that. So Luke and Lexi and Delphi went there to get over jet lag before they had concerts in Dublin. And so this is where, if you might remember a sermon I said where Delphi's new word at that time was wow, 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 oh. And those are some of the things she was looking at. There were other things that fascinated her much more, like her papa, right? And so I also got the morning time with Delphi in it. I love these two photos. The look like she's just utterly fascinating. Like, what is this guy going to do next? You never know. And just as for a little context, this is the night sky. So Lori probably went to bed at 11 o'clock, and she would go out right before in each of the places we were and took pictures unfiltered. This is how bright it was. So it probably got dark about midnight and got light again at 4 o'clock in the morning. Then we went to Ireland. So some of you have heard me talk about Luke is in a band called the Zach Bryan Band. He's the fiddler in it. And we went, they had 3 shows in Dublin and then 2 shows in Hyde Park in London, little place you might have heard of. And so we're like, well, we're right in the neighborhood. And so we flew over, and our second island then was being in Dublin. It's probably the place where we had the greatest fear and trembling because we rode electric bikes for the first time in a capital city where the people ride on the opposite side of the street where we expect to ride and without any helmets provided. And you're following on your phone trying to figure out where to go, but we survived. It was a pretty slick, it's kind of like the scooters, only it's bicycles. That was the system they had. And here's Lucas in his concert. So you can see Delphi pointing up at her dad. We don't know what psychological impact it has to look at your dad in a 60-foot image regularly. But Luke plays for the band. He does backup vocals, but also violin, fiddle, trumpet, and mandolin. And I thought you should hear a little bit of Luke. And so this isn't the Dublin show because I didn't find a video of that, but this is the big closing number. He brings it home. And then the second night, Lori and I got to babysit Delphi while they went to the concert. And so there's Delphi who loves swings, and I love this sign I found. And God gave us wine and beer and ice cream and kisses because he loves us and wants us to be happy. And then you could see the dog that was dining with us one day. And Lexi did her international studies in college in Dublin, and so she brought us around to all the cool restaurants she knew, and she took us to the Book of Kells, and then this is the library at the Trinity Library, Oxford Library, and you don't get a good sense of it because it just goes on and on forever and forever, but I have a certain fondness for books, and so... And then we went, this was the part that I contributed. Lori said, is there anything you want to make sure we do on the trip? And I said, let's go see Martin and Marietta, two friends that I made in the 80s. He's a pastor, and she has done international work for the church. And their son lived with us for 9 months when he did his international year in high school as an exchange student. And so I said, can we go spend time with them? And Tenerife, you can see, you can't see yet because I didn't put that one up. So if this is helpful, I put up two maps. This one gives you, I figure you're more likely to know where Spain and France are, so you can see those. And then the Canary Islands is where Tenerife is a part of, and it's just off the coast of Morocco. And so we were on Tenerife. Yeah, it was nice. They have a condo. So they've retired 3 years ago. They have a condo, and in the back they have a cottage that has a bed, shower, sitting area, and we could sit in there. And then we would come out and have 2-hour-long meals, just talking about things, no cell phones in the area, and they would have something cool they wanted to show us each day. You'll see a few slides of those. So this is Martin and Marietta, Lori and myself, and obviously a small island, you have lots of coast. And so this was one of the trips we took, just checking out the lovely water. I think nature is a really healing thing for me, at least in terms of grief. Just kind of, people talk about it as forest bathing or nature bathing. That was good. And the most amazing natural thing we saw is we went up at the place that's the highest elevation in Spanish territory. It's a dormant volcano, but it's above the cloud line. Oh, I'm getting a rebuttal from the back. No? Oh. No, I didn't take that. I took this photo off of the internet. But at night, we were up in this, away from, there's no big cities nearby, not even small cities, and the amount of stars there are in the sky just baffled me. I thought of Abraham. Oh, he didn't have to deal with light pollution or looking up at the sky and seeing your descendants will be like the stars of heaven. And so we kind of just sat out there and gazed up at the heavens. Wow. And then just some other places we hiked. And this one, it looks like a Packer fan built a cheesehead house. And it wouldn't surprise me if that were possible. So we didn't knock on the door, and then we did spend, after Tenerife, we went to Copenhagen. That was the time we were really touristic, right? We were just running around doing things. But this is the path to the parking garage at the Copenhagen Opera House. And then we're standing in front of that house looking across the water at the palace. Is that like that where the royals live? So what did all this time afford me? It moved me from weariness to rest, right, which was really important for me, right? I feel like you have more of me than left. Maybe even if you take the 3 months, like you have cumulatively more of me than you would have had if I'd have just stayed and not had those 3 months away. I know that's not a luxury, but carving out spaces where you can, even if it's hours, where you can just be, I think is really important in the face of grief. But 3 months is a luxury beyond all others. And I don't know if this makes sense, but I would just, in those times, I would just get broadsided by sadness, like out of the blue. Maybe it was something that triggered a memory, but often it was, I couldn't even tell you why. I would just all of a sudden be very, very sad. And now I don't feel, it's not, sadness isn't the way, but sometimes I feel fragile. And it doesn't last for a long time, but it's like all of a sudden for a minute, I'm like, oh, what's going on? Am I going to fall apart? And then just kind of hang in there, and I move out of it. And so kind of sobs becoming sighs is the way I describe that. And it's because of all those teaspoons that we took out of the bucket, making it easier to carry. Among the blessings of it, for several years, Lori was often heading to Iowa, where her family was, and I was heading to Oshkosh, where my family was. Not always, but often on our days off. And so we just didn't have as much time together. And so it was an open question if 3 months of nonstop time together would be a blessing for both of us, but I would say it was. It was. I think we worked it really well. Like we just let each of us be ourselves. And so Lori would go off, rent a bike and go riding or go to the conversation group, and I would read a book and then read another book and then read another book. And then we'd both go out for a walk, and we'd go out for dinner, or we'd make dinner together. The pastries, I should have pictures of the pastries. That's a glaring absence in this thing. But just being together was a huge gift. And I think I'm less distracted and more focused. Right? There are days still, but I feel like having cleared away some of the grief, still carrying it, but not as firmly, I'm able to focus more. And so you probably noticed I changed the way I preach. People had been suggesting that eye contact is important, and the more I could do that, the better. And so with a couple of exceptions since I came back, I'm trying to, it's all prepared. It's actually more preparation than reading what I wrote, right? But it feels like it's connecting with people a little better. And I read 70 books in the 3 months, so that's like 2 books every 3 days. And some of them are like 600-page books. So I listen with audiobooks, and I listen at a faster speed than they were recorded at, and so that all helps. But and then just remembering what fed me, and say, well, are there ways you can carve out moments of that in the present? And so I do that. I am aware that in order for me to be gone, a bunch of people had to step up and do more things. The staff, the exec, the whole council, people who helped out with worship, getting the space ready, the lay preachers that preached, the clergy that preached sometimes, or made sure we had communion every other week. Elaine did all the worship planning alone, which we usually do together. So all of those, and I know I'm forgetting to mention people, but all of those things made a huge difference. Barb Idol just pitched a tent in front of the church and kind of lived here nonstop, but I didn't come back to people saying, oh, things fell apart when you're gone. Just the opposite. They were like, it went smoothly, Phil. I'm glad you had that time, and this was a good time of discovery for us too. Just some final thoughts. With the shifting of generations, I realize that what gives me the most joy now is not my own accomplishments, but watching the next generations find their fulfillment, right? I heard somebody, this is like a funny, just if you stop and think about it. I was walking through Mayo, and the people behind the desk, one of them said, yeah, my parents have died, so now we're at the top of the food chain. Food chain, is that really the image of a family? But they were right, there's a shift that takes place. And so watching what's going on with my kids, Louisa is very involved in ultimate frisbee. She was on a practice team for a professional team. She served on the board nationwide of the team and is helping them come up with wise strategies. It's just one of the extra things she does. She's in a orchestra. She's a Dr. Ruge-Jones, right? So she teaches at Dayton University in the area of communications, and she went back to where I taught before I came here and did a lecture for the people there. And so just watching her, she's published more than I did my whole 18 years in the university, and it's just exciting to watch her come into her own. And then watching Luke and Lexi and Delphi figure out what it means to be a family, and in the midst of, oh, it's not that bad, dear. In the midst of a crazy life, and okay, maybe it's not as easy as I thought it was. And then this other photo, if you haven't seen this, so this is the concert that Lucas had in September. It was 112,406 people at it. It's the largest non-festival musical event ever in U.S. history. It was at Michigan State in the Big House. And so that's why it was all of a sudden gone in September. We went to enjoy that and had a nice little booth to hang out with the family. 3 little cousins running around together, and well, 2 out of 3 running around. 1 was in a basket. But that was fun. And of course, figuring out who Lori and I are going to be in this latest season of our life. And I thought somebody should have the last word, and you can guess who that is.
I love you.
So we have 6 minutes till kickoff, which means we have 5 minutes to continue. Or if somebody needs to leave now, I understand. It's, people build houses in Tenerife honoring the Packers. So if you need to leave. But I'm happy to, one of 2 things. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Or maybe you're like, oh, I went through grief and this is something I found really helpful that I would share. So, yes?
You have any trouble getting tickets to the concerts?
We have some pretty good connections. Yeah. And we have excellent tickets usually, and maybe get to hang around with the band before and afterwards backstage, so that's kind of fun. However, we have a limited access to tickets. So it's always, when they come to Minneapolis, Lucas went to Luther College. And so he has all these friends that settled in the cities. And so you only get so many free tickets each time. And so when he's closest to us, but they played in the Viking Stadium. They filled the Viking Stadium. So it's good to have the Viking Stadium have something useful going on. And so, is he still paying attention? Anything else? Yeah.
So during your sabbatical, I'm sure there's so much more that you could probably share. I love some of the quotes that you put out here. When my journeys of grief, I always struggled with books. I couldn't find good books. Are you planning to write a book?
I'm not planning to. I don't think I'm planning to write a book on grief. So this may sound strange, but we experienced a ton of grief around a particular kind of loss. It's not a competition, but I think losing a spouse is harder than all 5 of the losses we had, right? The people were all in their 70s, right? Or older? 80s or older. So it was grief. There's grief there, but it's a different kind of grief. So I would rather talk about it with people, but I thought the book that, and if anybody wants to know what it is again, it's How to Carry What You Can't Fix, was good. I have a problem with workbooks is I listen to them on audiobook and I don't do the work, right? Like I just listened to them and yeah, I got through another one, check. That's not really helpful, right? You maybe learned one or two things, but that book, moving through it, having a paper copy and moving through it slowly was good. And it was just basically like writing down memories of the people, or what did they give you that you want to carry forward? What are regrets that you have that now would be a good time to let go of? What are resentments that you had that now would be a good time to let go of? Just like 10-minute things.
I like that.
Yeah. And I think grief groups might, I don't know, I've had people say different things about grief groups because each grief has its own terrain. You can be in a room where you all are grieving, but you're doing it so differently or such different things that it's hard to do it. But I'll take that under consideration. How about that?
At least a brochure.
A brochure. I preach on occasion, so I could maybe, yeah.
Someone also told me, I've dealt with a lot of grief or grieving people through my career, that losing a son or daughter is right up there.
Oh, yeah.
Even higher than
Yeah.
I mean, like you say, there are different
Right.
ways.
Yeah, if you didn't hear, because of the unmiked, losing a child is way beyond what we went through, right? Yeah, and we've known that. I'm sure there are people in the room that have lost.
Not that one is better.
Right. It's just different, but it's the intensity is, and for the couple, it's a different strain because it's more apparent that you grieve differently when you lost a child and you're doing it together but not together at the same time. So that can be a real hardship. Yeah, Molly.
Are there any specific ways you plan to honor them as the years go by on their birthdays or anniversaries or anything?
So Lori had a big birthday this year, 60, and the reception was all Danish food that her grandmother made her, right? And that she shared with her mom and dad and stepdad over the years. Like at Luke and Lexi's wedding, we had the same cake. So that's a way. Lori does not go through a town where her loved ones are buried without visiting them. I never go back. So, I mean, just to be honest, that's just like that's a big tradition difference. I can't remember the last time I went to one of my relatives' grave sites. And so I might, but I'd have to have a reason to go back to Oshkosh. And I think we remember them on their birthdays. We always do. But I think for me, it's going to be the little things like singing that silly song that my dad always sang, or like he shows up through me. I'm very entangled with my father and carry some of his most admirable and less admirable characteristics. So like when we were at the trunk or treat at the Trinity Church, we were at it, and I was just asking kids things, and I asked one of the little 4-year-old penguin, so I hear you mate for life, is that true? And so things like that, that's my dad just shining through and making his presence known. Marry for life, that's what I really meant. But so I don't know, we've only had the first threes, right? That's right. We've only moved through my mom, your mom, and your dad's death anniversaries once. So there might be traditions that evolve. When we get out the Christmas tree stuff, like we'll be remembering the ornaments that came to us from that. The lovely ritual of sorting through boxes and boxes of inheritance and deciding what you're going to keep and what you're not, or where it could go that would be useful. That's a kind of ritual. But I think I'm more inclined towards those small ones. It was really meaningful to me, I will say, the All Saints Day. That was super meaningful to me to get to do that here among you all and remember people. And I think it will be in subsequent years, not just this year. All right, they're kicking off. Are we good? I'm happy to stay if you want to talk. I can miss 10 minutes of the game, but thank you so much for sending me and for coming to hear this report.